So today we are going to be talking about how to take challenges in your business and to find solutions and create a plan to tackle them. Hopefully that's something that you are interested in, and if so, keep watching. By the way, if any of you are new and this is your first time, always let us know. I'm really, really excited to have you here. What we do every week is come on and show up and do some kind of topic or some kind of training in regards to how you can do better in your business. We talk about insurance specific things, but mostly it's about talking about your business. I really, truly believe that there's so much sales training and so much marketing training and lead sources and different things that you might see. And I really try to bring something different that I think is a huge need and a gap in our industry, which is talking about how to really run a business efficiently and profitably. And a lot of the business foundations that we don't seem to learn within our industry, and people that are actually doing what we're doing, from an agency owner who's maybe been around for a while, maybe has seen some successes, different things like that. So always make sure you're commenting and engaging so I don't feel like I'm talking to myself, and I'm just happy to be here. So today, like I said, we're going to talk about how to take challenges in your business. We all have challenges. I don't care what phase of business you're in or where you are in your journey. We face them too, but it's really about understanding the best way for you to figure out what those challenges are in a positive way, how to create a plan to solve those problems, and what you need to do. So let's just talk a little bit about it, right? Challenges in your business and issues that you might have are going to be the things that are holding you back from scaling and growing and building momentum and selling more and retaining more, and at the end of the day, becoming more profitable. And God knows, everybody probably knows, and you know internally in your own mind, that we are already overwhelmed. And what we end up doing is kind of duct taping, bootstrapping, adding band-aids over some of the fires that are going in our business. And we end up procrastinating on actually figuring out what the source of the issue is and how do we fix it? What do we do? And if we don't have time to even sit down and figure that out, let alone try to spend time over and over and repetitively trying to fix this problem or putting band-aids on it, then we're going to be overwhelmed and we end up procrastinating and not doing anything about it. The thing is that we need to understand that at the end of the day, we cannot afford to make this a habit where we're just kind of duct taping the thing, right? And it is detrimental to us long term in hindering our ability to see these issues and these challenges that we have and not have a process or a plan on how to fix them. So we tend to avoid them altogether. Let me know in the comments if there's anything that you feel like you've either had on your to-do list or you know is a challenge or an issue, and it's just maybe you've put it in your planner to get done and it just keeps going on to the next day and the next week and the next month. And it's like, this has been on my list for maybe over a year, maybe for a few months or whatnot. Let us know in the comments what maybe some of those things are, and we can reference some past trainings or maybe create a training for the group if this is something that we see a lot of. But also sometimes just putting it in the comments and being vulnerable and allowing us to help give you any feedback is super, super important. And when you can kind of speak it out into the universe, things happen, right? So don't be shy. We love to see engagement. Make sure that you're letting us know what you kind of feel like right now is something that you might need to work on. So we kind of make this a habit. We tend to avoid things because we feel like we don't know what the actual root issue is or how to define what that is, and or why things are happening. We end up doing nothing about it, or we end up doing it halfway, right? And so we want to make sure that we are putting the process together and figuring out the way that we can do this effectively, and finding out a way to put out the fire for that moment and kind of move on with our day and just get through the rest of the things, because there's always going to be something else that's pulling our attention. Then we're not fixing the root problem, and long term that causes a lot of issues. The thing that ends up being the hardest part about this is really just making a decision. We have to be intentional, because it's almost like getting in your car and driving around and not having a destination and just taking random turns here and there. And it leaves us worse off frustrated and know better than we were when we originally got in the car, right? You almost are set back even more than actually tackling the thing and knowing what to do and having the intention behind it. And now we've just wasted everyone's time, and it's so much less important what you decide than actually just making the decision. When you first make a decision to take one step, a lot of things open up and start to flow afterwards, and then you can keep making decisions as that progresses. Unresolved issues in your business, in life, in all the things drain your energy and your business's energy and has an effect on your team, and your clients can feel it, right? There's a lot of ways that this affects what's happening in your business. You may not necessarily be able to pinpoint it or put your finger on it or be super visually aware of what's happening, but that's what it does. It puts a huge mental load on what's happening day in and day out. And I don't know if you guys know this, but 80% of the thoughts that we have every day are repetitive. And when you can't start solving some of those things, it's just going to be more repetitive mental loads that you and your team, sometimes your clients, are carrying around, and it causes even more issues long term, right? We're talking about how this hinders our ability to do business and compound day in, day out over a long period of time. So I'm going to give you a suggestion that actually I read in a book. I believe it's Traction by Gino Wickman. It's one of my favorite books when it comes to business. There's a few of them. And if you are on the email list for getting the weekly goods from us, then you will be getting information about the resources that I use. So definitely, if you're interested in getting on that email list, let us know. But if you're getting our emails, this is the type of stuff that I try to share weekly on what I use, what resources I have found, what are some of my favorite things that I do and use. And sometimes it's just fun stuff just to help us get through the week as entrepreneurs and women. But I did send out an email talking about some of my favorite books. So that's awesome. If you're on the email list and you were able to get that book was definitely on there. Again, it's Traction by Gino Wickman. And there was a section in there talking about how to tackle issues in your business. And this is kind of where it stemmed from. And then I created kind of my own process for this. And I remember that before we went and did the independent freedom jump, I sat down with my team. Some of you might know this story, but I sat down with my team and said, hey, we're going to spend the next 90 days, 3 full months before we open our independent agency. And we're going to tackle all the things. We're going to create a plan for everything. We're going to decide what our goals are. We're going to be super intentional. And those 90 days is really what created my equation that I talk about often, which is intention plus strategy plus action equals results. And I really need to trademark that. But anyway, and we sat down and we started with intention. We dove deep into all the things that helped set the intention for what we wanted for our business, for what we wanted individually, each for our own lives. And then we came up with a plan, the strategy, and then we decided to take action. And that's what really gave us the results. So with that in mind, we took a section of that time and we decided to create a challenge list. And that challenge list was really about, let's identify all the challenges that we've gone through in the last 6 years, because we were in business for 6 years before this happened. And how do we not take those challenges with us into this next venture and endeavor? And one of the most important parts of kind of having this meeting was really creating the environment and the culture to allow everybody that was part of this to be vulnerable, to encourage them to take responsibility when some of the things that are falling through their cracks might have been their responsibility, or maybe they didn't know what they were doing at the time or what to do or how to make it better, and give it the time and focus that we needed in this meeting to really dive into the root issue. Because most of the time when you first start creating this list, people are going to throw things out and they're going to be kind of surface level. There might be symptoms of results that are being created or frustrations that are being created be based on the root issue, right? So it's really important that you also think about, okay, you just mentioned this as possibly a challenge, but like, what could be the cause of that? What could really be the root issue? And as you do this often, you and your team will get a lot better at figuring out what that is, but you got to start somewhere. So you have this meeting, you create that environment and that culture that it's a safe space for them to be open and honest and be vulnerable. And you want them to bring you issues to the table. You want to almost encourage it, right? But there is a way to do this where it's effective, and we'll talk about that. So when you are creating that culture and environment, you want to be able to explain and articulate to your team what the purpose of this is. And it's really about getting your team to buy into the idea that this is meant to work as a team, meant to work on this together in a capacity that's kind of like upfront, right? So you kind of create the solution and the work and take the action that's needed to solve some of these issues for the greater good of the entire team in the business. And you work up front to solve the long-term pain and suffering that in turn is going to allow for healthy growth and scaling and success of the business, because everybody is going to reap from the benefit of that, right? It's going to give the business
financial security. It's going to allow them to get pay raises. It's going to allow them to have a better work experience day to day. It's going to maybe allow people to not have so much on their plate. Maybe it's going to allow them to get certain promotions. Maybe it's going to allow them to not be so stressed and overwhelmed, right? So when you have this meeting, it's really about, hey, we're all coming together to the table to bring some things that we feel like if we could fix, maybe we don't know how yet, but if we could fix these things, everybody's life and their work experience and the overall business is going to do better.
What does this meeting look like? I am going to reference one of our clients in Agency by Design. She had a team member who just seemed to always complain and always talk about all the issues that were happening in the business and what things weren't working. And I really suggested to her that let's try something before we decide this person has a bad attitude or is just a complainer or is just super negative or what have you. And I said, what I want you to do is once a month, you're going to have a recurring meeting with this individual. And you're going to let them know that this meeting is for you and them to spend some time together so that they can bring any ideas they have or any challenges they think that we have to the table. It's a 15-minute meeting every month where she gets to come on and just say, hey, here's the list of things that I feel like we need to fix. And two things happened. One, she had somewhere to go and an outlet to express what she probably felt like in the times that she was bringing these things up periodically here and there, and usually at the wrong times, right? A place for her that was safe for her to express these things and kind of get them off her chest and get them off her mind. The other thing that it did was it allowed the agent to tell this team member in more or less words, you're important. What you have to say is important. I value your opinion, but I want to make sure that this is effective. And so this is what we're going to do on a monthly basis. I'm pretty sure she doesn't do these meetings anymore. And so we'll talk about that in a second. But that's basically the idea, right? And so your team may not say, hey, we really need to have a meeting to go over challenge list and put things down on paper. You are going to take the initiative to create what that meeting looks like and explain to them the purpose of it. And like I said, it's really the greater good of how do we get a better environment, more efficient processes, make everybody's life easier, see ourselves scale and grow, because at the end of the day, that's what everybody wants, right? And how do you do that in a healthy way? You're going to schedule this meeting and describe exactly what this meeting means. And then you're going to challenge everyone that's attending this meeting to bring you two issues. They have to bring you two issues. There is no like two. You have to bring two issues to the table. It could even be like, I hate the toilet paper that we buy. It's not comfortable, and I want better quality toilet paper because it helps me have a better quality of my work environment. Okay. It can be whatever. But we want to get them in the habit to be paying attention, to be thinking about what type of issues there are in the business, what kind of challenges you guys are facing, and how you guys can work through this process, right? So they've got to bring two things to the table that they would like to see get better. Or maybe it could even be something like, we are not doing this type of marketing. And they come and say, we've talked about this before, or I've brought it up before, or I really think this would be important, but it's a challenge right now for us to implement it, or I don't know what to do or how we can put this together. So it doesn't necessarily have to be something right now that feels like, something that's kind of on fire that you got to put the fire out, but like it's a challenge right now to get some of this stuff done where we could be more innovative and could have more success or more efficiency. So they've got to bring two of those. And it's very important too that you communicate that this is the safe space. Like I said, we are leaving egos at the door. We are leaving titles at the door. So if you have managers or sales leaders or some type of, operation chart or accountability chart for how your business operates, all these titles don't matter. Everybody needs to come and bring a challenge and come together collectively to help the greater good of us trying to figure out how to do this. Okay. So emotions have to stay at the door, past beliefs have to stay at the door, because we don't want none of those things to influence the challenges that we want to be listed. It's about, again, creating that environment. When you have this meeting and you start asking for some of these issues, what's going to happen is you and your team is going to gain a lot of clarity. And clarity is one of the most important pieces of being a business owner and even working in an environment. How many of you maybe feel like if you could just find clarity or just be clear on something, then you can go and take action, or you can decide that that's the focus that you're going to spend, but you just don't have that clarity and you don't know what to do, right? So that's what this is meant to do. And the minute something comes to your awareness and you're clear and you know that it needs action or attention, you can do it. It's so much easier. This is the hardest part. The hardest part is getting the issues out on paper. And what we did is, if you know those big post-it, kind of like big poster board post-its, where it has some glue on the top, it's like a big post-it basically, but it's a poster board size. We took those and we plastered them all over our conference room, and we just went at it. And so you could then give a pen to each, or like a marker to each team member, and have them write the issues on top of each post-it themselves. You could just have one and just start titling out all of the things that are coming up. And then you can start the process that we're going to talk about now. But it's interactive, it's a team thing, and this is meant to be a positive thing. So maybe you might want the first time to buy snacks or donuts or coffee if you're doing it in the morning or in the afternoon, or what that looks like. And you want to make sure that this is a good thing and that you're coming with a positive attitude and a good vibe and bringing the team together. So we create the list, right? We put the titles of what we think the issues are. When you put the title on there, or whatever you're calling it, have that person maybe get into a little bit detail of where it's rooted from and what are the symptoms or what are the issues that it's kind of causing overall. Remember to not be afraid to dive deeper and really make sure that that's the root issue that you need to solve. That if I solved this one thing, the symptoms and how it's affecting the overall business is going to get solved. Next, you've created the list and you've identified the issue and you feel confident in that it's the root. The next thing that you need to do is, again, you have your team member kind of tell you what that looks like and give a little bit more detail, but I want you to actually write down what the definition of the issue is. So if I say that, let me get an example. I say that, give me an issue, guys, in comments, something that you guys are stuck with so I can actually use a real example. Wow, I'm drawing a blank. Let me think. I'm trying to keep it simple too. I don't want to give something too detailed or that could be massive. That would take a lot more time to explain. Let's just say we're having a really hard time in our office having team members take out the trash. Okay. And some of the symptoms are that, our lunches are being thrown out in the trash and it smells bad in the office, or that there's just one person that seems to just be taking care of this every time and it's gaining frustration. Or maybe it's like we're running out of office supplies and we don't seem to have the things that we need to get our job done. And then somebody has to run out of the office and go buy supplies and come back and unload. And this could be an issue, right? Because it's a time waster. Maybe it's a money waster, because if you really had the time or maybe the system in place to order online and maybe price shop some things and have, your favorite shopping items in an online cart that you could quickly add, or an online list you could quickly add to your cart and have it delivered, right? That could have been a solution. But these are just some small things that happen in an office or a business. And so defining what that issue is, the issue is that I go into the closet that has all of our supplies and I can never find, this folder or this pen or this office supply that I need. Well, what is like the root issue? The root issue is that nobody has ownership of this and nobody's tracking this and nobody knows what's happening, right? It's like we're all expecting everyone to just get office supplies or just walk in the closet and just see it there. And the definition is that we need to create a process or have some type of system in place so that we can consistently and reoccurringly have these office supplies in stock for when we need them. Okay, so I don't know if that was a good example, but that's kind of the definition, right? Missing office supplies definition is we need to have, or we don't seem to have the office supplies get replenished and stocked on a regular basis for when we need them. Once you've defined the issue, then you want to ask your team. Okay, I want you to use your team. Your team is the most valuable asset that you have. A lot of us sometimes are afraid to ask our team because we may look vulnerable. We may not look like we know what we're doing. Or if we ask them their opinion too much, they're just going to always give us their opinion and it's going to become negative. That is not true. If you give them the right space to release some of their frustrations or to have a safe space to talk about these things, then it's going to become part of the culture and they'll know that there's a time and a place for us to discuss these things. And then you're going to follow through and actually solve some things, and they're going to gain confidence in your ability. So when you're asking them these things, they'll know you're asking because you want to make it better for them and for the overall business. And so they're going to trust you and they're going to want to give you their feedback. So once you've defined the issue, you're going to ask them this question on each one. Say, if we could wave a magic wand, it's called the magic wand question. If I could wave a magic wand right now and solve this, what would it look like? So it would look like me walking into the supply closet and always seeing these 5-10 supplies in stock regularly every month. And then you could have follow-up questions where it's like, okay, what are the, top 5 or 10 supplies that we use every month? How often do you feel like you need to go back and get more of those supplies? And let's create, maybe a list of what that looks like and what needs to be ordered every month, right? So the next thing is you have your challenge list, you have identifying and making sure you really hit the root cause, and then you also have the definition of what that challenge or issue is, what you're going to do. Oh, and then you also ask the magic wand question and you have examples of what that would look like in a perfect world, or if you could just be a genie and right? Anybody ever watch I Dream a Genie? That was one of my favorite shows growing up. That and Bewitched. I wish I could just, anyway. At the end of this meeting, you and your team are going to pick only 3 things off the list. Now, it doesn't mean the rest of the stuff on the list, doesn't get taken care of at some point. But when you first do this meeting, the first time, you're probably going to have a lot longer list than you would doing this all the time, right? And we'll talk about a little bit what that might look like in the future once you start. But you got to start with one. You got to make the decision to do this and gain that clarity and create that environment. And so at the end of this, you're going to only pick 3 things. And those 3 things have to be things that are urgent right now. How many of you have an issue? I need some love in the comments. How many of you have an issue deciding what is urgent in your business or what is urgent in your day-to-day? I know that we get pulled apart by the whirlwind of the phone ringing and people walking in and team members calling off because they're sick, or a client needs something and it's taking 5 more hours out of your week than you had planned. Talk to me about what is difficult about finding things that are urgent in your business. Because I think that's where most people will get stuck when they do these meetings, is they'll see this list and it's overwhelming. It's like, now we got to narrow it down to just 3 things. What are going to be the things that are urgent? So the urgent things will be chosen by these 2. 1, a time issue, meaning there's a deadline. We've got to get this done. This is something that is coming up and we have to start tackling it right now. The second way you choose what's urgent is this is costing us money, right? If this is something that is costing money, and not always money in the sense of you might lose some money if you don't get to this thing, but if it's something big that is not getting taken care of over and over again, it's going to be a lot of money if we don't fix it now than if we wait 6 months. Okay. So time and money. And let's not, anything that costs time and money, or that, you have a deadline and it's coming up and we're procrastinating on, all of those two things are going to cause a lot of frustration, energy, mental load, like we were talking about, right? A really low vibe in the office, just different things that are happening, stress. Nobody wants that. And so The other thing you can do if you need like a third thing is something that's really weighing everybody down where they feel like we've really got to tackle this issue like ASAP because we don't want to continue living with this stress or this frustration because it's costing us money and there's a deadline or it's costing us a lot of time and we're not being efficient. So those are the ways that you can narrow down what are the 3 things that you're going to choose. Once you choose those 3 things, and you have what the magic wand answered, saying this is what it would look like in a perfect world, you're going to sit down with the team and say, okay, we've gotten our 3. And now we need to decide the steps that it's going to take us to go from having this issue to having a perfect possible situation of what we want that to look like. And what steps is it going to take for us to implement to get from here to here? So we just had our monthly collective call on Monday, which was really, really great. If you're still interested in joining the collective, you absolutely can. It's open to enroll anytime. We'll put the link in the comments below. But at the end of the call, I had a question for everyone. What's it going to take? So, what's it going to take for you to get from having the issue to getting to what you want it to look like? So, whatever that looks like, ask your team, what's it going to take? What steps do we have to take? And write it down for each issue that you have. Then you have a plan, right? You have a step-by-step plan. Now, is it always going to go perfectly? No, don't get discouraged. You can refine it. First thing you have to do is make a decision to take one action. And then as you start making those decisions, you might find that it's easier than you thought, or you might find it's a little bit more complicated, but then you and your team know these 3 and you can work through it. When you have that plan of knowing what it's going to take, you then are going to decide who's going to do this. You're going to assign these actions and this plan to someone. It could also be someone's. If it's an entire sales team and you want them to get together, maybe outside of what you guys are doing in this meeting and kind of come up with a plan on how to disperse this, maybe you assign it to the sales team leader, and that leader is going to then work with their team to figure out how they're going to take action on this. But whatever you do, it has to be assigned to somebody. We can't just write out a list, make a plan, and then say, okay, like, hopefully this works out. No, somebody has to take responsibility and somebody needs to be the owner of getting this issue resolved and at least start working on it. Does that mean that you are never available again for them to get help if they need it? No, but that way it does kind of take it off your plate and puts it in their hands and allows you to also cultivate an environment and a culture where you're giving them permission to go out and do the best they can, even if they make a mistake or even if it's not perfect. But now we are all getting into the habit of problem solving. You assign it, okay? So it looks kind of like this. All right, team, let's make a list. We make a list. All right, let's make sure this is the real issue. We made sure we defined what that issue is so everybody's super clear on what we're talking about. Then we write out exactly what it would look like in a perfect situation, or if we could just wave the magic wand. Now we decided on 3 things that were urgent that we have to tackle. Next, we assign them, right? We assign it to you 3 people or whatever that looks like. Now we have the assignments and we know who's going to have to take care of this. Now the next thing we do, and I know this sounds really overwhelming, but I promise you this meeting is like not even that long, but I want to make sure you have these steps, and I will be adding these steps to comments or maybe in the description so you can go back and copy them or write them down or what have you. But you guys should always showing up here with notes. I know that, or a place to take notes. I know that sometimes you're driving or you're doing the thing, but I highly recommend that you come with a notebook to write notes because I'm dropping golden nuggets. So you should want to take notes. I always try to show up at trainings or listening to podcasts or YouTube videos or all the things and try to take notes, even sometimes if it's in my phone. All right, they're assigned. Now what you need to do is schedule. And what I mean by schedule is whether it's in the calendar, Outlook, Google, I don't care, whatever somebody uses, or it's, in a paper planner or it's a wall calendar, whatever. You're going to want to schedule out the steps that this person needs to take that you've discussed to get this done. And then you're going to want to put a deadline on it, on when they need to get it done by. Okay. So it's got to be scheduled. Otherwise, again, you're going to have a plan. It's going to be assigned to somebody and it's not going to be ensured that it's going to get done. And, or they're going to come back and say, oh, I wasn't sure you wanted me to get that done now. Or, oh, I had other things that came up. It's got to be scheduled. The second piece, it's scheduled. Now your calendar just popped up and said, hey, you're supposed to go on Amazon and you're supposed to create an office supply list in Amazon. And we are going to then make sure that you order all those supplies, make sure that we have enough. And then every month on this date now, you are going to go in and order all those things on Amazon to our office. We already have the list. We know what our supplies are that we like, and the issue should be resolved. Okay, after they take that action and kind of create that process and figure out what the best way to handle this and tackle it, then you want to track. So, tracking that's going to look like making sure you, as the leader, are going in and making sure they took the action they said they were going to when it was scheduled. To then see that you're going to audit kind of that supply list, make sure they didn't put $7,000 of supplies in there, and or going to follow up and say, hey, now that we've ordered these supplies for the last 2 months, do you feel like you're running out of things? Do you feel like this is better? And now we don't have this issue anymore. Go to the issue list and cross it off. When you have challenge meetings in the future, you can go back and talk about the things you decided to tackle previously and just ask everybody how they think it's going and how they feel. Or maybe if they come to the table and say, actually, I found a more efficient process or maybe something more innovative that I wanted to bring to the table, what is ever? Tell me, after kind of listening to this a little bit, if this is something you've ever done. Have you ever heard about doing something like this? Are you now interested in maybe trying this? Did you already, while you're listening to this, put in Google Calendar challenge meeting and invite your entire team to it? Let me know what your kind of feedback is or how this has gone so far for you in regards to what we were talking about. There's going to be issues that you might not be aware of when you do this. And how are you going to fix the things that are wrong in your business if you don't have that awareness? So don't be afraid to tap into your team and use them. It's important. They're doing the things every single day that you might not even be doing, right? Or you thought this issue was already resolved, or, there is a process in place for this issue. Like, why aren't we using it? That's the issue. That ends up being the root issue of like, we do have a procedure. Why isn't your team using this? Is it because they weren't trained properly? They didn't know this resource. They haven't been told this in a long time. Nobody was checking up on them or holding them accountable for doing these things. You never asked. It's possible too. And the thing is too, is that when you just avoid it, it just creates more and more animosity and resentment and stress. And then that becomes your culture. And I think it's really important to be straight up and honest and facilitate the best possible place for all of these things to kind of get better. And so I was telling you before that I was going to talk about what this looks like in the future. So we did our challenge list in those 90 days. I think we did another one just because we were totally moving into a new venture, probably about the first month that we started. So about 90 days after. And then we did another one about 6 months in, another one at about a year. And then now we just have a section in our annual meeting where we bring up some challenges. And they're usually much bigger challenges now because my team has learned to be problem solvers. They solve problems all day long without it even coming across my desk because they've learned the way I would want to solve that problem. They've learned my language, my preferences, my standard, my expectation. And so a lot of the small bullshit things that come up in the office don't even come across my desk, or I don't even hear about it because they're solving those things. So I would say in the beginning, you're going to want to do it monthly if you have to, and then quarterly, and then semi-annually, and then annually. But you don't want to ever not do it at least once a year to really tackle some of the things and again, give them that space. And not just that for you. If you are not taking the time to ask them, what are some challenges that we have? You're not going to know. And you should know, and you should care what your team thinks and how it's going so far. All right. I hope you really, really enjoyed this training every single day through Slack. Another workshop this month. We're going to be announcing that soon. So the workshop is on Zoom. It is not on Facebook. You have to register. And this month, we're going to be talking about how to become a master executor. If you are someone who has a lot of ideas, if you're a visionary, if you tend to have great plans, but you struggle with showing up and taking action, then you've got to be at this workshop. It is about 2 hours and it really dives in deep on all the tactical things and the tools that you're going to need to become a master executor. I mean, who doesn't need that? Execution is one of the hardest things that business owners struggle with. Not just that, it's going to teach you how to help your team become master executors, which return will bring you money. And like who, yeah, We all need that. So we'll be announcing that soon. Make sure that you register. If you don't register, you won't have the link. And if you don't have the link, you can't come. So we'll let you know about that soon. If you ever have any other questions, you can always comment after you watch the videos, and we would gladly get back to you on those. So I will see you all next week.